Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we are back with something that's really quite interesting. We have basically the colossal Jurassic World figure that everyone had forgotten about because we've got ourselves the Mimo Toys Tyrannosaurus Rex. So what this is a line of figures from Brazil by Mimo Toys. I believe that is where they are located, and I've only ever heard of these figures being sold in Brazil. Weirdly enough, they were actually promoted at a Comic-Con at one point. I remember seeing some images of this figure specifically at a Comic-Con a few years ago, so it kind of gave me hope that maybe these figures would eventually come to the United States. That never happened. I don't think there are any intentions of them coming here at any point in the future, as far as I'm aware. But, you know, of course, things could always change. However, up until this point, I would say they have been pretty much exclusively sold in Brazil, as I haven't really heard of them being sold anywhere besides Brazil. And it's a line of basically, again, colossal dinosaur figures, colossal Jurassic World figures that are released. There are quite a few species in the line, one of which is actually a Carnotaurus, but it is the most impossible figure to find. I cannot find it anywhere. I have seen images of it, but I've never found a link for it available for sale anywhere at all. But luckily, recently, someone on eBay has opened a shop. They are from Brazil, and they have begun posting some of these Mimo Toys figures on there for sale. Now, if you are interested in grabbing them, I will warn you, they are definitely a little bit pricier because they are gigantic, and they come all the way from Brazil. So you're going to be paying a little bit more than you would expect to pay for like your average Mattel figure. But I've been pretty much dying to get a look at some of these in person for so long, so I just went ahead, placed an order, and I now have this one here, as well as the Indoraptor, actually, to take a look at with you guys. And you can see that the box art is actually pretty nice. We've got very high quality box art. You have a window area with a plastic covering that's obviously see-through. And if we turn it to the side, we've got the Jurassic World logo over there. And then if we turn it to the other side, the Jurassic World logo again. And if you look at the back, rather than an image of the toy itself, you just have a really cool Rexy image. So pretty interesting as far as that goes, but it is a really nice image of Rexy, I will say that. Regardless, I'm actually quite excited again to break this out of the box and take a look at it with you guys for the very first time, so let's pop it out right now and do just that. So there we go, we have our T-Rex now out of the box and standing here before us, and it is definitely huge. It's not quite as large as you get with a Mattel Colossal Rex, though I will say that, definitely a bit smaller than a Colossal Rex from Mattel, but it is very large, though you can definitely see it's not quite up to the type of quality you get with the Mattel figures. You know, you can't really tell when you look at images online exactly how good a figure will be until you at the very least can look at like a real video review or see it in person. That'll really tell you exactly what a figure looks like. But this one, I feel like, although looks cool, is definitely a bit on the cheap side, and the sculpt itself isn't exactly what I would call screen accurate. You know, there's definitely some stuff that could be improved, though it is a very cool looking version of a Rex, I can give them that. And it's just in general an extremely cool collectible that not too many people in the United States have. So I'm pretty happy to have it, even if it's a little bit ugly, and he's got some uber huge thighs. He also has like something going on with his back where it kind of looks like in the hip region it's almost sunken in, which I'm not a big fan of. If we actually turn it around here, I can kind of show you that. You can see right here it has this kind of like sunken in sort of a look. I think it's just because of the positioning that they have for the Rex. Definitely gives it a bit of an ugly appearance there. Also, in general, the seams where the articulated joints connect are all pretty ugly for the most part everywhere that I see them. Regardless, we're going to go ahead and jump straight to a closer look, and we'll check this figure out from there. So starting up here at the head sculpt of the Rex, you can see it looks pretty okay. You know, you've got some nice looking skin texture, I can say that. I don't know how, you know, accurate it is to what the Rex looks like in the film, but it's not terrible. You know, they've done an okay job of sculpting out the fine detail. in some areas pretty darn nicely. Other areas a little muted, like in the eye socket area. You can see a little bit of a muted look up here. It's a little muted, but overall it doesn't look terrible. You can see the nostrils right there. We also have the eye painted out with a yellow and a black pupil. You can see a little sloppiness as some of the yellow has kind of leaked out of the eye there, and it's obviously been applied with what looks like an airbrush, which is interesting to use the airbrush to paint the eyes. But you can see that we've got like a variation of a brown for the majority of the body color, and then you also have a different variation of brown that kind of moves through, also very clearly applied with an airbrush. We do not, unfortunately, have an articulated jaw. The jaw is stagnant. It's in this position all the time, which is a bit of a bummer. You can see the teeth are all sculpted, for the most part, kind of together. Some teeth are sculpted individually, it kind of looks like, but the majority of the teeth are definitely sculpted together. They are painted with a yellowish tone, like a light yellowish or an off-white tone, so it does give them at least a little bit of realism. Same deal for the teeth on the lower jaw, all kind of sculpted together. You can see the skin stretching here as the mouth is pretty wide open, rather than giving it some nice precise paintwork. Again, it seems like we've just kind of taken the airbrush and ran it over, and that's pretty much all we did for that area. If we can kind of turn this and get into a position where we can look inside the mouth, you can see the tongue sculpted out in there. You can also see it's painted with a nice pinkish tone. Also sports a bit of a glossy look, but when you go inside the mouth and look on the upper side, you can see, although there is some nice detail, there isn't any paintwork up there anymore. As you lead down into the neck, you can see that we do have a nice turn in the neck for the T-Rex. It's turning its head toward its left. Actually look up here, you can see more of the detailing and paintwork. Decent looking paintwork, just not much to it when it comes to this Rex. But you have all sorts of wrinkles and creases here on this side of the neck, pretty much exactly as you would expect to see, considering it has its head turned in this direction. You can also see a few osteoderms poking up here and there. Again, the brownish tones moving down. You've got a little bit of saggy skin there in the throat, probably because the mouth is open on the Rex, kind of squishing the skin right there. The neck does articulate, though I will say it's a little hard to move. You can see that's like, it just pretty much moves that much. Right now, I can definitely force it to move further, but it's a bit of a task, and I'd be worried about damaging the figure, so not a whole lot when it comes to the neck articulation. And you can see that the joint here in the neck is super, super obvious. Like, it's basically a swivel, and I can definitely get it to go. You know, you can move it, but it's like just really stiff. But it is a swivel joint, and the pieces here, the body parts, don't line up perfectly when it comes to where they should. And it's also kind of like it's like a plastic, but it's kind of a squishy plastic. Not even really squishy, but you can definitely see a little bit of a flex to it. So it's kind of like a softer plastic. Maybe that's why it doesn't have the, you know, quality of like a Mattel figure where the neck would line up a lot better. But as you move down into the body, you can see the skin texture does actually look pretty cool. I think if you applied a nice dark wash to this one, it might actually pay off pretty nicely. Would definitely highlight all of that skin texture because it has some decent kind of cracks and crevices to it as you move through the course of the figure. You do have arm articulation, but it can only go forward and back. The arm actually feels like it's more of a rubbery material. You can really see how it flexes and stuff. Kind of weird skin texture as you move down into the arms, though. The arms are huge, first of all, but they're also kind of awkward looking. They almost have like a saggy skin sort of a look to them as you move down. The fingers as well don't really look that great. The nails are short and stubby, and they don't have any paintwork for them, unfortunately. As you continue to move back into the body, here's where we get to those massive, massive thighs and hips that this T-Rex has. Like, hips and thighs are gigantic. If you look at it from the side, kind of try to give you an angle of this, you can really see, again, that those thighs are quite huge. If it didn't have a tail, it would just have a giant behind, I think, at this point. But you can see the muscle definition as you move down is alright. You know, it looks okay for what it is. You can also see the skin texture looks fairly decent moving down. You've got the knee right there, the calf muscle as well. And then as you move down into the foot does have some scoots moving down. Absolutely looks a bit muted when it comes to the detail down here as well. You can see the nails are sculpted out. They don't really have that great of an appearance to them. And again, the paintwork is fairly sloppy. It looks like they really just basically splash some paint and then move on because it's definitely not precise or nicely placed. There are dew claws, but you can see on the foot over there, again, same thing where it's just like super, super lazy paintwork where they didn't really place it all that nicely. Oddly enough, though, we do actually have paintwork here from head to tail on this, because you can see that that brownish tone that runs along the top does run out onto the tail. We do also have a swivel for the tail, but I'm not going to mess with it too much, because honestly putting the tail on was an absolute nightmare, and I feel like it's like just one twist from falling off and then I'd have to start all over again. It can probably swivel the whole way around, but I'm just not going to mess with it. As you lead out, though, you can see the tail does lead down, kind of giving the Rex almost like a tripod positioning for its stance. You can also see that the tail does look okay, though. Definitely not perfect length, I would say, on it, but it looks alright as far as like the detail. Has pretty nice looking curves to it and some okay looking paintwork for the most part. Also, the legs can move forward and back. You can kind of see the hip moving, and the legs are actually pretty smooth. It's a little hard to really give you a good view because it's so big. We're very, very close to it, so not the best visual of the legs moving, but they do move. There is also a different tone of color, a different shade of brown for the underside, so you do have a little bit of extra paintwork, and as you move through you can see what the underside looks like. Definitely not perfectly capturing the likeness of the underside of a Jurassic Park T-Rex as his foot smacks the camera there, but it looks okay, I guess, for what it is. If we try to take a look at the Rex from the opposing side, it's a little bit harder to get a good shot of it. Let me try to turn it a little bit. There you can kind of get a better shot of the head. Obviously, the paintwork is really sloppy, especially when it comes to the skin opening there in the mouth. You can see it's kind of like run up into the cheek area of the T-Rex. The eye looks okay, but that paintwork in the mouth opening area is really bad. You can see as you move along, again, the head's kind of turning away from us. It looks like the lower jaw almost would be a little bit longer than the upper jaw. I'm not sure why, if it actually had the ability to close the mouth anyway. As you lead into the neck, you can see all of the skin wrinkles and stuff again with the turn in the neck. You can see the very obvious seam where the head and neck is connected. Again, really quite ugly as far as that goes. As you move back down, again, you've got the arm. The arm articulates, so not really a whole lot that you're going to see different on this side compared to the initial side. One thing that you will definitely see, though, that is different on this side is the fact that the leg is in a bit of a different position compared to what you see on the other side. But again, you can even see where the leg connects. It's just a little bit ugly when it comes to the area where it does connect. Obviously, we have the skin over here of the stomach. You can see kind of like some skin wrinkles and stuff, and you can see the rib cage even a little bit there on the Rex. But as you move up, here's that area where it kind of is like sunken in. It just looks like, almost like the figure was warped, but I don't know that that's the case. I think that's just the way it looks. Again, I'm no professional on this one because it's the first time I've ever seen it, and it's not like I have a chance to go to the store and look at some others, but it does look very awkward up here in the back, almost like it definitely looks like it warped, or maybe has at the very least broken its spine and hip up there. But it's a little bit awkward. As you move down the leg, again, the leg over here looks pretty much like it did on the other side. Decent looking skin texture of the knee, the calf, and again, the foot sculpt similar to what we saw on the other side. The nails look like they're painted a little bit better over here, but still not really very good. And then you again lead out into the tail with the decent looking tail that we have for our Rex. So it is a pretty cool figure, but it's definitely not near as nice as the Mattel figures. Another thing that's a bit awkward about this figure is it doesn't seem like there's any real good way for it to stand where you can get both feet flat on the ground. Like this foot here, the left foot, well, that's the thigh, but obviously the left foot almost feels like it's a little warped or something. Like, I don't know that there's any real good way to get this Rex, again, standing in a position where both feet are flat on the ground, which makes it, again, look even more awkward. But as far as a size goes, this is going to be pretty fun because to get the figure even remotely in frame, I have to have the camera back pretty far. But to reach the figure, to measure it, I'm going to have to move much closer. So to do that, we're just not going to have the best visual of the figure, I would say. We'll go ahead right here and get a height on it in the position it's in. Let me see if I can get a better way for it to stand. No, it really does not. Like, there's just no real good way to get this figure to stand where the feet are flat on the ground. So we're just going to have to measure it the way it is. For a height, you were looking at about 16.5 inches or 42 centimeters. And then for a height, we'll just turn it around actually, or I mean for a length. We'll turn it around and then measure from the tail to the head, but we'll just keep the camera up here at the head. Definitely a little tricky to get this measurement, and probably not the best angle for you guys. About 30 inches or around 76 centimeters. Probably a terrible angle for you, but that's basically what I'm getting as far as a measurement goes. Before a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colossaurus, Robert Muldoon, and the Collect A Human Being next to our Mimo Jurassic World Rexy figure, and you can see that obviously the Mimo Rex is gigantic in comparison to these other figures here. There is just no comparison between these guys. I think the best thing we could probably do as far as comparisons go with this figure would be to bring in some Mattel Tyrannosaurs to really give you a good idea of the scale here. You have the Extreme Damage T-Rex, which is basically like the Extreme Chompin' T-Rex, which you can very clearly see is way, way smaller. Then you have the next size range up for Mattel with their T-Rex, which is the Epic Roarin' T-Rex, which again is like the Thrash and Throw size range for their Tyrannosaurus. Again, significantly smaller than the Mimo Rex, and the Rex is actually standing forward a bit, you know, closer to us. So if we actually kind of move the Rex back and put it under the armpit of the Mimo Rex, you can see it looks even smaller now next to it. We've also got the Hammond Collection Tyrannosaurus from Mattel, which you can see is definitely getting closer, but still not quite in the size range of the Mimo Rex. But then for one final size comparison, even though it's completely almost eclipsing the Mimo version, you can see the Super Colossal T-Rex from Mattel here in front of the Mimo Rex, which now the Mattel version completely dwarfs the Mimo Rex. The Mimo Rex, like I said, is kind of a colossal version. Like, it's gigantic, but it cannot compete with one of the super colossal figures from Mattel. So this Mimo Jurassic World Tyrannosaurus is honestly a bit of a mixed bag. You know, it's kind of cool looking for what it is. It has a very large, very impressive size to it, which definitely helps give it that cool look. It also has kind of a cool pose to it, with the almost giving it the when dinosaurs ruled the earth ending of Jurassic Park sort of T-Rex roar and positioning, sort of, but it's also got a lot of cheapness to it. You know, the paintwork is honestly kind of bad through the course of the figure. It is nice to see that we do have paintwork from head to tail, even paintwork on the underside from head to tail. It looks like just an ever so slight difference in color on the underside of the Rex, and then of course the brownish tones moving down along the back. But moving out from those areas, you have a lot of sloppiness, like the paintwork of the inside of the mouth. When it comes to the skin stretching is very, very sloppy on this. The eye paint is pretty sloppy. The nail paint on the feet is definitely very sloppy. There is no nail paint at all for the fingers. The teeth are okay. I think that's probably the best area of paintwork on the entire figure, but definitely sloppy when it comes to the paint. The sculpt looks cool, but it's very clearly not screen accurate. It definitely has the likeness, kind of the Jurassic Park or Jurassic World T-Rex. You know, they've captured it okay, and the coloration, I think, kind of replicates Jurassic World's Rexy, sort of, for the most part, but the sculpt is also a little muted in certain areas. Some areas have really nice detail, other areas have, you know, pretty muted detail. The hips and everything and thighs being so massive definitely help to make the figure look ugly, and the fact that it's sunken in on one side is very awkward looking. The articulation in some areas works fairly smooth, other areas not so much. It's also a little bit ugly when it comes to the articulated joints, because there are gaping, you know, seams and stuff for quite a few of the areas. So the figure, again, definitely has its ups, it has its downs, but it is still a very hard figure to find, and the fact that it is now available on eBay, even if it is a bit pricier than it probably should be, but, you know, again, as I said, it's coming from Brazil. It's got a pretty long ways to go for such a huge figure. So to be able to import something like this, the price is definitely going to be higher. But again, it is a fun collectible to add to my collection. I know something like this is fun to have just because it's not something everybody here has, so it's kind of neat to have something like this, even if I did have to spend a bit more than, you know, I would have liked on it. It is still a really, really fun figure to add to my collection. If you are interested in grabbing one for yourself, I will include a link in the description to where you can do that. There is actually, I believe, the T-Rex, the Indoraptor, and Velociraptor Blue available from the seller right now. There are also other figures. There's a Carnotaurus, an Indominus Rex, and a Giganotosaurus out, but they're not listed, and the Carnotaurus specifically, which is the one I would love to have the most, is the hardest one to find, it seems. But if you are interested, I will include that link in the description, so head on over there, grab this figure if you'd like to add it to your collection, and like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.